Welcome back. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Jarrod Richey from Geneva Academy in West Monroe, Louisiana.
That's right. Glad to be here.
It's good to have you. Jarrod is a sweet friend of ours. He has been to CSW many times, and we're just kind of recounting some of that and can't wait to recount some of that for you. But also here, Headmaster, Mr. Dyson.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Glad to have you. And we got Dr. John McConaughey helping us record today. Thanks for being over there. Jarrod, why in the world are you here again in Wichita, Kansas?
Well, aside from the fact that y'all are a glutton for punishment and hearing the same three corny jokes and anecdotes, I'm here because I love music, and I love seeing y'all love music. I love dancing. I love giving that joy of music literacy to our students. They don't know that they will love it. And like all things in life, you can't tell them. You got to do it. And so that's why I'm here, to kind of see what y'all are doing, see you in your native habitat, come up here to the warm weather of Wichita in January.
Glad we could do that for you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm just happy to oblige. Get out my winter coat that stays in the closet.
Yeah,
all year round. But yeah, just seeing the classes and fellowship with your teachers. I know so many more of them now than I feel like, I need a parking space or something.
That's what we should do, the Jarrod Richey spot. This is becoming an every year thing. So, Jarrod, we met a few years ago. Sounds like you first came here, and then we saw you in Branson, and then we have continued to bring you back and see you in Branson. And you kind of sold us on something that I think both Josh and I and our music department, our fine arts department, just kind of fell in love with. And there's some weird words in there.
That's right.
Like Kodai and musicianship and some things that maybe we don't know a ton about. But would you just kind of, let's recount, like, how did we even get to, we're doing this thing, we're being extra weird in music, and we love it, and we want more of it?
That's right. Yeah, the whole Kodai philosophy is just a particular way of teaching music literacy. So not really teaching about music, but teaching students to do it, giving them the language of music, like we do in English, like we do in other languages, but treating music not as some special gifting that a few people get sprinkled on at birth because their mom played the trumpet or their dad was a band director or something, but actually treating students like they are made in the image, which they are, of a singing God, and that they can sing, and to do all of this in a way that disguises learning. Close your ears, students, if you're listening to this. But it disguises learning through fun and through joy. It is a way of making them more human, and so it doesn't always look like didactic, just wagging of the finger and teaching a concept. What it looks like in the life of the school is just singing, finding your singing voice, learning a bunch of songs, and figuring out what it is to make music together, really to exercise a muscle that culturally is not really used as much. It feels a little awkward at first to some of our people because they're in churches where they're sung at and they don't have to sing as much, and they feel like, is this even right that we're doing this? And then after a while, as I've seen here with y'all, they forget that. They start to go, wow, this is what we do. We're a singing people. So that's kind of what the Kodai philosophy is actually teach students. Don't tell them about the families of the orchestra. Don't tell them that Mozart was a child prodigy. All that's interesting information. But I could tell you about, where George Washington was born. But if you don't know how to read, what good is it really? And that's the kind of approach that y'all have adopted here with your teachers getting that training, with kind of putting that philosophy over your school. But also what I've really appreciated that y'all have done is you've said, okay, but also we want the music culture. We want all the trappings of it. And so y'all do hymn sing, and you have music is not an elective here. And that's really encouraging to see. And I know y'all are seeing the fruits of that. And
for sure.
5 years ago, I'm sure you imagined it would be much more musical when you two caught this vision. But it's even...
It reminds me, I actually just remembered this as you were talking, that this correlated to us rethinking language, Latin in particular, at the same time of how we were teaching Latin, because in a lot of ways, we're teaching the same kind of maybe way, and we're like, well, the students aren't really They're not coming to love Latin. They're not coming to be able to actually read or speak Latin fluently. And you came along while we're having that same conversation about Latin. Is like, this is exactly the same thing. How do we actually shape the way that our kids think, where they're thinking musically, not just, here's a paradigm of some notes. And I remember that correlation even just now.
Yeah, it's right under our noses historically that this is how we should think about music, but we've kind of just got in educational ruts. We just do what the world does, as you well know, in so many aspects of education, and music is not accepted. So we kind of just do what we see everybody else is doing until someone goes, maybe we should teach this as a language. Maybe we could actually operate from the assumption that everyone can be taught to sing. Now, does that mean that everybody's going to have the same ability, or we want to listen to a recording of every person that ever sings? No. But we're also not just training, brains on sticks, as y'all well know. We want to form them into humans that actually are full-bodied, good people that can sing and live their life in such a way that reflects the God whom they serve.
Yeah. Somehow we did come up, this idea did develop that only certain people can sing.
That's right.
And I think that was a
culture,
big,
you mean?
Yeah, culture. And in our school, I think we had that. And I think that's one of the big things that we have made a lot of progress in as a faculty, as a student body, that, yes, actually all of us can sing. It's not about how well you can sing.
That's right.
It's about singing because that's how we're designed.
Yeah, that's a good way to frame it, and it helps when you think of music as a language, because nobody thinks that way about Spanish. I don't have the spiritual gift of Spanish. No one said, right? They just say, well, I didn't grow up in Spain, or I didn't grow up in Mexico, or my parents weren't bilingual. That's the way we need to think about music. But what we often do is we think, well, I can't do it. It must be that I'm not gifted in it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a rationalization of ignorance, or you just kind of after the fact say, well, I've never done it, so therefore I must not be talented in it.
Yeah, right.
And that's just kind of spread. And we just need to kind of let go of that and say, no, actually, unless you just have some physical anatomy trouble, everybody can make music. Everybody can sing. And you really not have to do it by yourself. But it's good to do it by yourself some, because you need to. I mean, the Bible speaks about that, singing to one another, speaking to one another. That speaking is actually alliterative to actually talk about singing. It's making music. Just like shouting in the Psalms is not just hooping and hollering. That's a musical term. So speaking to one another is, is important. One of the hymn writers says, let those refuse to sing who never knew our God, but children of the heavenly King may speak their joys abroad. And that's the same kind of use there, is we're all learning to sing. Let those refuse to sing who never knew our God, and that's really the issue here, because we're not, and y'all are doing great work with this, is we're not just prepping them for a good ACT score or SAT score. We're prepping them to be Christians through and through, from their brains, sure, to their hearts and their bellies, their hands, their voices, and y'all have tackled that, and it's actually a lovely aroma. I'm sure you're noticing, and your teachers are noticing.
But, for sure.
But you got to work them out of that idea that it's only a few people can sing, and that's once you can let them go of that, they go, okay, well maybe I can
too.
give it a try. Yeah,
I think that's been one of the biggest things this year. For the first time ever, we have compulsory singing K to 12. So no one gets to opt out. And actually, any staff who aren't in a classroom at the time when we have our 9th through 12th grade hymn sing group, we ask them to come and sing with us. And so to have men and women amongst our 9th through 12th grade who are just standing there learning to sing. I know I've become a better singer this year.
For sure.
I joined the
yes, you have.
that was a quick affirmation.
Wow. I meant myself. I have also.
I would not have considered myself a tenor. But I placed myself among the tenors because, first because I'm not going to let Mrs. Hale live this down, because she kept calling them tenors and men, referring to the basses as the men and the tenors as the tenors. Anywho, but also because there were like 14 tenors and like 45 basses, and every 16-year-old boy thinks he's a bass.
That's right.
Though he is not. But it's been amazing how it's kind of like working out. Like as I've worked that muscle, or vocal cords or I don't know how it works, but whatever's happening, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can go up to that note, and I don't quite know what the notes are yet. I learned treble clef growing up because I played the trumpet, but I don't know what the notes are on bass clef yet. But being able to be like, oh, I know how those relate to each other, and if that's so, I know how to get down to Re, and I know how to get up to T, and
That's right.
And we can start doing some of those kind of things. But
you're sounding it out.
Yeah.
That's, if people are listening, your parents listening, you're treating, like we said, music as a language. So how did you learn language? Well, you had phonics. Well, what are the phonics of music? Those are the do, re, mi's, the solfege, as we call them. Solmization is the nerdy word. But that's just sound out the notes, sound out the rhythms, and actually, phoneticize them. And that's what you're doing. And that's what, that's the whole point. And then it becomes less of a weird mystical activity. It just something you can kind of roll your sleeves up and do.
Yeah, exactly. I think the other part of what we caught when you were here that first time, and then especially once we were in Branson together and had an opportunity to see what folk dancing could look like, is the I was going to say the joyful side of Kodai. Singing is joyful.
That's right.
The more apparently fun side of Kodai.
Yes.
Where, hey, if you were in Hungary when Kodai was around and you were singing all these Hungarian folk songs, and there just happened to be dances to all of them. And so they would sing songs and dance. And so we have picked up dancing as a school, our 9th through 12th graders, usually around twice a month for 15 to 20 minutes, spend time folk dancing. And we have learned all kinds. Our barn dance is full of folk dancing. Our winter dance, right now as we're recording, it's tomorrow night, but last week's winter dance is going to be full of folk dancing. And what's kind of the interplay of folk dancing? Why would folk dancing help us learn how to sing or how to be musical? How is that helping our music literacy?
That is an excellent question. The first way I always think of is music is not meant to just happen and rattle around in your ears and in your brain. Music is meant to be moved to. And so students, whether they're young or old, can gather a whole lot about music. What's the form? Is this the A section and the B section? Without having someone to explain to them, hey, this is the A section. No, they can feel it. You can teach them about form in music. The other side of that is you can fill up their tanks and get their blood flowing and help them, remind them, distract them that they're made in the image of a singing God and a God who rejoices over his people with singing and with dance, and that's kind of the fun. So much of the classical repertoire, particularly the music of Bach, if you ever hear of these French Baroque suites, that was all dance music, right? They're all wearing powdered wigs, and you can see some recreations of that. A lot of that was dance music. We think that's dusty music that you just stand still, and that the real dance music is the music with a heavy drum beat and words you can't understand or you can't repeat, and you just wiggle at another person. We think that's dancing,
right.
And really, that's just kind of assaulting somebody else. I mean,
Right.
that's weird. That's not really dancing is communal at its core. If you think about
And building up.
Yes. If you think about even back in the Old Testament, what do you think of the Jewish culture? That's all communal dancing. And we've kind of lost that. There's a whole lot of reasons why, but that's the beauty for me in teaching as a music teacher and a choir director. That folk dancing helped me with my young people. I had money in my bank account, so I could ask them to sing in small groups in my musicianship class. I could make withdrawals, and I didn't have to go into debt relationally with them. And that's what it really helped do. Not to mention, like I said, it helped them feel the music and get out of their own heads and just kind of move and enjoy it.
It's amazing what you can learn of, like, oh, this song is faster than that one. That doesn't actually mean that it's in 4/4, but also not in 4/4. Could be cut time, or it could be a different step, or how many of those things. 3/2 is a funky one.
Yes,
that's a funny.
I think that over the past year and a half of having this, and I think correlating Grant to whenever you came back to Wichita. This has maybe been the most impactful thing, which may seem like a small thing. You're like, okay, what you brought back, but it's actually been really huge. It had some really significant culture shifts not just in the dances, but in even our K through 12 interactions, in ways that maybe even more than things like hymn sing so far. I think hymn sing still has a lot of potential to go. But to what your point you made earlier, Jarrod, about you're doing something without them realizing it. It seems like this has been that kind of sneaking behind the dragons, so to speak, where the kids, they're resistant to it, but then when they get into it, they're just having the time of their life. Right?
Yeah. I don't know how many boys will be like, "Are we dancing today?" I'm like, yeah. And they're like, all right.
Yeah.
And immediately kick off their shoes and run to the basketball
right.
court.
Yeah.
They can't keep up appearances any longer.
Yeah, you have to act like you don't like this, but
it's
I
been
saw you
amazing.
smiling. Yeah. Oh, it's a total blessing. I love it too. It's fun to be out and active and to teach them, hey, dancing's not dating. Like I tell them that
that's
all
exactly
the time.
right.
It is showing deference and love and honor for the person you're dancing with. And if I'm dancing with one of our other teachers or one of the male teachers or one of our students, or it's not a weird thing. We're just doing this thing together, and it's actually we're part of the whole that's much bigger than us. If you could only see the whole thing working from the top and how every couple moving at the same time and going underneath the arms and all works together so that
It's the body of Christ.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a picture of that. It's like a little object lessons. Isn't it funny how the Lord does that? He says, "I am the door. I am the vine. I am I am the tree of life," that kind of thing. He knows we need these metaphors, we need these pictures, and folk dancing is just that very thing. You see yourself, you're like, I can't folk dance the Virginia Reel by myself.
Yeah, that's
I need
exactly
all
right.
these people, and I have to exercise patience and forbearance or whatever. I have to be a good neighbor. I have to love somebody I may not even know. It's a wonderful lesson, and it's fun. At the end of the day, it's fun. I would say if a parent's listening to this and is wondering how can they encourage, how can they encourage what's being done here? It's something that's purposeful, as we said. It's something that's going to need their gentle hand on the back of their young men, and it's going to need, this idea of trust the process.
Yeah.
And just be cheerful. It's no big deal. We have to think about music the way we've thought about a lot of subjects, which is we're not just doing this to get a 4.0, right? You guys are not just turning out, cogs and robots and AI, clarified thesis writers. You're training out humans that are made in the image of God. And so we now more than ever need hymn sings and folk dancing and picking up a pencil, right? And shaking someone's hand and opening the door for someone else and sitting around a table and eating. We need that now more than ever so that these students, in a world of social media, scare quotes, we need more social interaction.
No doubt.
And that's just another way of kicking it up a notch.
We have about 8-10 minutes left, and I'd love to highlight something that you highlighted with our parents the other night. We got to meet. There were about 10 parents sitting in, and just a last minute meeting. Come, whoever wants to listen, learn more about this, and got in a little bit on my own history with choir and music. And I wish Mr. Hatterberg could listen to what I'm fighting for now, because Mr. Hatterberg, my 8th grade choir teacher at Horseman Middle School in Burlington, Iowa, kicked me out of his choir because I was a punk. I'm sure none of you can imagine that, but and I went boldly walking away, and I don't need this, I don't want that, and now I'm totally regret not being in any of that in high school and going instrumental music only, where a totally different story than what you were sharing from Magician's Nephew, and would just love for you to recount that scene and the cabbie,
Sure.
If you could, and just what's going on there, and maybe giving families a hope for at least the Bickle family. Hey, Grant, just because you squandered this doesn't mean you have to squander this forever.
Well, just Grant, first off, the fun thing is, a pastor friend of mine once said, I heard at a lecture or something, he said, God draws straight with crooked lines, And so you may have a crooked line in that story, but look at what that is. That is just, that is the story that doesn't even look like it's going to be a musical, magnificent, lovely effect.
Yeah.
And that's just how the Lord works, first of all.
Yeah.
But that's how he works in all of, that's the pattern. What appears weak is what is the most strongest. Little virgin girl births the Savior, right? Little shepherd boy topples a giant, right? So that's very much in keeping with the picture of the patterns that God uses in creation and in our lives. But that's also in Narnia. That's in Magician's Nephew. Our students read it. They read The Lord of the Rings with Tolkien. They read Lewis's Narnia. And in that chapter 8 and 9 there, that it's Aslan the lion, who is this roaring lion who can create the universe of Narnia for the kids to see and the witch to see, and this cabbie. And how does he do it? He sings it. It's his song that makes the trees and the ground and the stars and they make music, right? And it's this beautiful poetic telling that we've read to our students, and we gloss back over and we think, yeah, that's interesting, as if that's not how, in a real sense, we should think about. Even my talking to you guys now is musical.
Yeah.
There's a rise and fall. It doesn't have to be operatic, Nessun Dorma or something from Messiah. I think sometimes we think very limited that way, which is why it's good to do some chanting, and it's good to sing all kinds of things so that we can get that singing, the full-orbed. But in that story, he's creating Narnia by singing. And that cabbie didn't know what was going on. But in the end of that chapter, he says he has the right response, the response of just bewilderment of what he's just seen. And he says, "Glory be, I'd have been a better man all my life if I had known there were things like this." And that's what really beauty is meant to do. Beauty is meant to be something, whether it's song or art, or it's meant something by which we see what is true, good, and lovely, instead of what the world says to us, which is, as I was telling you, Grant, instead of truth, goodness, and beauty, the world's triumvirate here is the new, the cool, and the sensational. And that's not what we're after. We have plenty of that there. And that should be the hope for parents, whether you've been trained in music or not. Young men need to see their dads struggling to sing. They need to see y'all cheerfully doing the hymn sing, you teachers here. This is wonderful to see you, Grant, and see even, Kevin Thames doing, and other guys who I don't know as well. But they need to see that's a much more powerful sermon. Yeah, maybe you as a 45-year-old man can't spend the time to learn the music that your kids can do, but your kids can see you preach that sermon that, no, I want you to be musical. I don't expect you. We're not teaching language. We don't teach all English here expecting our students to be English teachers. And we're not doing that for the music either. Y'all aren't doing that.
Yep.
It's easy to get confused in that. If they give too much music, how's that going to serve them in college? How's that going to serve them in the quote, unquote, real world? Well, I'll tell you, it's going to serve them when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise, not to decline Latin, not to, solve geometric theorems and proofs and all of that, to sing God's praise. And if you can get your heavenly priorities straight there, then if the Lord does give you adult father 30 more years on this earth, you could move that musical literacy needle. Just do music. And that's really the encouragement for parents, is that so much of the history of the church, music literacy has come not only because they had singing classes or whatever, but just doing music.
Yeah.
Showing up to hymn sings. It was called Sunday worship, right? And it was called just making music. And that's what, if you're just unsure, just start small.
Yeah.
Sing a little bit. Show up here at the school. Sing in those convocations. Sing at home. Sing at church. Seek out churches that do more of that, or encourage the people in your church to do more of that. And you will find, and your children will gently rebuke you, and that you will feel like, wow, I need to get better at this. And then you will leave things better than you found it. And that's really they can then stand on your shoulders. You can stop that trend, and that's what y'all are helping to do. And you're going to help with music literacy, then has the potential to come music maturity. So when you can do the little faithfully, then you'll see even greater. You think the hymn sings are fun. Wait till you sing the music of even more genres and older than the buildings in Europe, then you really get to see the trajectory of good and how music can testify to God's goodness and it can shape us to be better humans. That's when it gets really exciting. And y'all are doing great work here, and I'm big fans of it.
Yeah, it's great. The line from Narnia is one of my top probably 3 favorite lines in Narnia, and one that I've thought about quite a bit. And I think we had with the seniors were in Florence last March, in the church called Santa Croce, the Pazzi Chapel. I don't know if you're familiar with this chapel, but the acoustics that are absolutely unbelievable. And we circled up with another actually classical school that was there. And we sang the doxology together, and we sang Amazing Grace together. And I mean, it was one of those experiences of beauty in a way. I mean, there wasn't only a dry eye in the place, right? And after it was like, genuinely felt like I want to live life differently. Because this exists.
Yes.
Because this kind of beauty exists, I want to live my life in a different way, right? To the point that
it calls you to something, much like walking into that cathedral, your eyes go upward at such tall architecture and beauty and stained glass and all. I don't know. I've been to the Duomo. Yeah. Is that the same chapel?
It's not the same. It's okay. A different church not far from there.
But it was a long time ago, many sleeps. I would love to go back, go to the academy and all that. But that's the beauty of that architecture, is just the same with good music. It's supposed to move you to something that's bigger than you. And that's what you're feeling. Singing together, something glorious, something communal, something transcendent.
Yes.
And that's what the Cabby saw, and that's what Lewis does so wonderful of a job in making it accessible. And I just think we need to meditate on more of that. Yeah. Tolkien does it too in the Silmarillion with the creation of Middle Earth. It's there, and these guys were steeped in the classical education of their time, and they had that view of creation, and I think we should too.
I think from that too, you can, you hope to be able to say, remember, that you experienced beauty there. Now, when you open up, this, open Moby Dick, or are you looking at a theorem, a geometric theorem, right? That beauty is also here, right? And you want the students, they start having eyes to experience God's beauty, right, in all those things, which I think is what how that is so integrally tied to our mission statement. There aren't just some beautiful things like music that's beautiful, but it stirs our hearts to see that beauty is everywhere, right?
That's right. The beauty, in a sense, you could say that beauty is the fittingness of something and its message, but beauty doesn't always have to be lovely. I mean, there can be beauty in a tragic way, in the ability to communicate something that is beautiful but doesn't leave you feeling all warm and fuzzy, right? Maybe certain parts of a story leave you, but it is communicating a beauty of message. We were talking last night about evaluating music, but this can apply to literature as well. We just go for the words because we think music is not a language. We think it's only good or bad if it has, Christian lyrics to it. But actually, it could be composed with amazing music. It could have, non-Christian content. It could have foul language. It could have, nihilistic, worldview. And then it could be performed excellently. And that's a 3-pronged approach. As Christians, we should look at the content, the composition, the performance. We shouldn't just all run them together in a reductio and just say good or bad, right? We should actually be able to see the beauty, to see what I think the layered meanings, that there's this narrative going on and there's this, and it's like an onion. You can just peel it and there's more. The scriptures are this way, right? The creation, we see such layered meaning, and that's what we want our students to be able to see. We want them to be able to see it in song. We want them to be able to see it in art, in literature. We want them to be able to see themes. This is why music, is so helpful, because we don't see the world binary anymore. We don't see it in ones and zeros. We're able to see it as, Jesus is the greater Moses, but he's also the greater David. How do those fit together, right?
Yeah.
How do these little storylines, or how does this little theme in this second movement of the symphony, well, we've heard this theme, and then we've heard it put together in a new key in the next movement, right? We've been training this rhythm of the saints. See what I did there?
Yeah.
Steal
I like
from
that.
Paul Simon's. That's like his second best album.
Yeah.
It's the one after Graceland, if you've ever listened to Paul Simon. And, so that should be y'all's motto, the rhythm of the saints.
Just to finish up, I think as you were just talking just now, I was like, man, if I'm sitting as a dad listening to this, I'm like, okay, great. And how? And Deuteronomy 6 was brought to my mind. Like,
that's right.
As you sit in your house, as you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise, like the 4 natural rhythms that we're given every day with our kids, with our wife, as we're sitting at home, and was even challenged by you. You said something the other night at the parent meeting, like, when you're driving in the car on the way to school. So this morning we sang "Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing," all the verses, and
sweet.
And it was like, after it ended, it was like, all right, that wasn't as weird as I thought it was going to be. But what are there any other encouragements just in the last minute you would give moms, dads, in how to begin?
Yes. Don't bite off more than you can chew.
That's good.
If you want to sing, just sing the doxology. You don't even have to sing all 3 verses.
Yeah.
Right? Just do the little things. Just like, hey, you don't have to have a whole prayer service after dinner and before you get everybody ready for bed. Let's just pray and let's read a couple verses here. Let's sing something. Just think small. Think the Lord will be happy with just the day of small beginnings, and you'll get faster and faster with what you can do. But I would, moms and dads, if you're listening to this, support your students cheerfully. Play down the singing. Make sure that you're singing as much as you're able, or you're putting your money where your mouth is. And I mean that figuratively and literally. If you can support the work of the arts, and not just singing, the visual arts here, if you can really encourage the teachers here, that would be huge.
Yeah. If
your sons can see you doing that, if your daughters can see you doing that, that's going to be really culture shaping, especially downstream from COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, this has now become the real essential activity because it's the thing we were taken away from doing for a time, unless we were like, over my dead body, right? Right. I'm just not going to let you see, right?
Yeah.
But this is what they know. This is how we are. So we've got to keep everybody separate, because we have to not let us be the body of Christ. And that's really what you're doing. You're learning in community. You're doing theology in community, studying in community, singing in community. Otherwise, you could just have homeschool do it, and that's fine to do. Right. But there's something else going on here. There's a culture of learning and love, and really, I think something that's going to be a powerful force in this area.
Well, we have to end because we literally have to go folk dance. So it's time to go teach those 9 through 12 graders some posties, jigs.
There you go.
Thanks for joining us,
Thanks, Jarrod.
Appreciate it, guys.
Have a good one. Welcome back. Today.